Hi, I'm Peggy Farron, and we are live with the Understand Photography Show, where we talk about travel, nature, and fine art photography. Welcome to episode 81. Stay tuned because today's guest is Marty Hulsebos, who will be sharing his insights and experiences about creating and selling fine art photography. But first, I just want to let you know that we are broadcasting live on our Facebook page. So it's facebook.com/understandphotography, and you just scroll down until you see the live feed. But then we take the recording and we put it on YouTube so you can watch it later. Or if you are like me and you like to listen to podcasts, you can listen to the Understand Photography Show on iTunes. So just do a search for the Understand Photography Show and you'll find us. So it would help us a lot, especially on our YouTube channel, if you would like the videos, if you would make comments, give us a review. Say, hey, I love this video. Hey, I hate this video. Hey, I'm doing the same thing. Ask Marty questions. He'll answer you. Also, at Understand Photography, we have, it's actually my ladies photo retreat that I'm leading. That's coming up pretty quickly. It's May 4th through the 6th, 2018, here in Naples, Florida. It's a ladies photo retreat weekend, and it's limited to just 3 ladies. We have 1 opening left, and we have so much fun. We learn so much. We do so much. You'll love it. So come with us, and we become best friends because it's such a small group. It's really fun. It's for beginners to intermediate photographers, but even advanced photographers will have a good time because we do all kinds of cool things. That's on our website at understandphotography.com. Also, our signature course, the 4 Weeks to Proficiency in Photography, that starts May 2nd. That's an online class, but it's a live class. I'm there teaching you. So if you need help and say, hey, I can't find the button, I'm going to help you along. May 2nd, again on our website. Last thing, our book, Joe Fitzpatrick and I put together a book called Florida Photo Spots, and this one is Naples and Collier County. So if you need a good guidebook, you can find our book, Florida Photo Spots, on Amazon.com. Last thing I'm going to say before we start the show is that our newsletter goes out probably tomorrow. I try to get it out on the 1st of the month each month. And if you're not on our mailing list, sign up. You can sign up from our Facebook page. You can sign up from our understandphotography.com. You can give me an email at info@understandphotography.com. Our newsletter has everything we've got going on, but it also has photo tips. And our motto at Understand Photography is we simplify the technical. So if you are the kind of person who likes things spelled out for you will like us. Okay, my guest today is nature, landscape, and fine art photographer Marty Hulsebos. I met Marty when I was actually photographing. I was working for the Naples Art Association photographing the art fair, and I went, wow, your work is really good. So he agreed to be on the show. Marty travels extensively to photograph and sell his work at art shows. So welcome.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And you're kind of new to Florida, you said.
About 18 months, yeah.
From?
From Iowa, as well as many other parts of the country. I've lived all over.
But you were raised in Iowa?
No, I was raised in New Jersey, then Arizona, where I went to college and lived for a while, then many places.
Wow.
But traveling a lot for, as you mentioned, for art shows and, of course, to photograph.
Okay, okay. And you've won lots of awards for your photographs and published in different magazines and got a big name. Got a big name for yourself now.
I just have fun doing what I do. And I think that's the key. You know, if you do what you like, you'll never work a day in your life. You know, you've heard the saying.
And you've been a photographer a long time?
30 years.
Just 30, huh?
Just 30, yeah. I'm 60, so it's half my life.
Ooh, I'm almost there. Scary, scary age. So now, when you started off, were you doing landscape photography, or?
You know, it just kind of started off spontaneously. I don't have any formal training, just self-trained, but I picked up a camera when a friend came through town and said, you know, I'd like to go do some photography. I was in Arizona at the time. So I borrowed a camera and we both went out to this very unique place, did some photography. I loved the way the pictures came out, and a fire was lit. And it hasn't gone out since.
That's awesome. Doing what you love. That's awesome.
Yeah. I started off slowly, then I had to learn. You know, you start off getting inspired, but then you got to learn.
Yeah, then you get a little frustrated because you can't do the things you want to do until you learn what you're doing, right?
Exactly. You're borrowing a camera to start with, and it was the film days, so you know, things cost a lot more money, buying film, developing film, and when you want to shoot a lot, it costs a lot, and but it was worth it, and I just let the fire, I just fed the fire, basically. And landscape was my main interest, but I've branched out into other areas when the opportunity came up. But then over the years, I had opportunities to sell, and then I started doing some art shows, and I shot with mainly color for many years. I shot with film for 20 years and then digital for the past 10 years.
Okay.
But I started to apply to some art shows and also connect with some galleries, and they were really liking my black and whites. And that was fine with me because, especially in the digital age, when a lot of people are now getting into photography, and it's much easier, to have a niche like black and white sets you apart.
Yep.
And black and white photography seems to have a history of being sort of artsy, if you will.
Right.
And I was very comfortable with that.
Okay.
I've
So
worked
now, are you strictly black and white now?
at the art shows. That's how I jury in, but I add a little bit of a brown tone to them, kind of like sepia, but not quite.
Yeah.
I experimented with different color tonalities, so I call them warm-toned black and whites.
Warm tone black and white.
Yeah. And I find that personally, a neutral black and white is a little cold to me,
Okay.
and to warm them up, it makes it easier in my mind to live with in your room.
Okay.
It matches with decor a little bit more easily. So that's my personal preference. And I found it to be the preference of most of the people who come into my booth too. They
Okay.
really like it. And I go with what sells.
I know the one picture you sent had the kind of the brownish, what did you call it?
Warm toned.
black and white.
Yeah.
With a rainbow.
So-
and you'd think that a rainbow wouldn't look good in black and white, but
Okay,
it looked amazing.
who'd have thunk? A
Yeah.
rainbow in black and white.
I wouldn't have thunk.
So the story about that picture, my wife and I wanted, the picture is taken at Canyon de Chelly, which is the second largest canyon in Arizona. It's on the Navajo Reservation, and it's quite remote. Unlike the Grand Canyon, where everybody knows where it is, everybody goes there. But Canyon de Chelly is a wonderfully photogenic canyon. And I got there. We camped near the spot because in order to get there by sunrise, you know, we were going to have to be there early. But it was raining, it was cold, it was windy. I planted my tripod on the top of a 1,000-foot cliff, and I waited. And I waited, and it was cold, as I say, rainy. I covered my camera with a plastic bag. Finally, after an hour, the sun broke through, and I got my light. But then the rainbow came, and lo and behold, you know, it was this fantastic, clear rainbow that just, the picture itself was my pot of gold.
Right.
But the rainbow, what was unique about it, that the rainbow extended below the horizon and into the canyon. So that made it very unique. But for about 2 years after that, because I was exhibiting in these warm-toned black and whites, I had never even considered using that picture as a black and white, because a rainbow surely has to be in color, right?
Yeah.
So I was playing around with my pictures one day, and I was going through that one, and I thought, curious, let's try it. I converted it, and lo and behold, it was really striking.
It is really striking.
And
we'll, by the way, audience, we'll have that picture in the show notes on understandphotography.com. Go ahead.
so I put it out at the first show, and it sold. And whenever I show that picture side by side with the color version, more people like the black and white.
Wow.
Which is kind of interesting.
That's so
and
cool.
So it tells you.
It is, I mean, it's unique because you expect it to be in color with a ring.
Yeah, yeah. So there's some fun things you can do with black and white that give it an extra oomph. So for example, if you just take a straight picture in black and white of a scene and you look at it on your computer, it tends to look a little bit flat and lacking in contrast.
Okay.
But back in the day, Ansel Adams' day and the black and white photographers of old, they used some techniques to really adjust the tones so that they really had a lot of power. And one of the things they did, even though they were shooting with black and white film, they would put a color filter on the lens.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that the color of the filter would change particular colors in the scene. So if let's say you use a yellowish filter, well, any yellow in the scene would end up being lighter, and any color opposite to yellow, in other words blue, would end up being darker. So what you have when you're looking at a landscape scene is that the blue sky becomes really a deep, rich tone, and foliage, green has a lot of yellow in it. The foliage became a little lighter, and it gave it a nice sort of tone to it.
Right.
So
now we can do that in Photoshop, right?
We can do that in Photoshop and Lightroom and other programs, and we don't have to worry. Well, digital cameras shoot natively in color anyway. We can put it into black and white mode, but what it does, it just converts it from color to black and white in the camera.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No, because then you lose the ability to have all this extra control, which is wonderful, because let's say that we're shooting autumn foliage and I want my reds to be a certain tone, want my oranges to be a little lighter, my yellows lighter still. Well, I can have really customized control of that in my software, not just having a linear adjustment as if you just used a filter, but you can really customize it wonderfully.
Now, in your black and whites, when you do it you convert in Photoshop or Lightroom?
Lightroom.
Okay, and they have. You can pull up the yellows and things like that right in Lightroom. And in Photoshop, you actually click on, it says black and white, and then it gives you that option. Do you want more yellow? Do you want more red? That kind of stuff in there. And you can make some, Joe Fitzpatrick has a program on why black and white, and he shows the same picture with several different, are they called channels?
Color channels, yeah.
Color channels.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's amazing what you can do.
Yeah.
So what do you think the difference is between like an artistic landscape image versus just like snapshot?
Right here.
It's in the heart?
It's in the heart. If it strikes you as a photographer when you're seeing the scene, wow, this is really impressive. I really like this. And even more so when you've composed the image through the viewfinder so that you're leaving out things that are not important to the image to give the image even more impact. That's the difference. And especially because, as we know, photography is really a two-phase process these days. Shooting and then post-processing.
Okay.
When you finish your post-processing, then when it really maintains that impact that you had when you were there in person, then you have a chance of it really.
Yeah, but how do you, I mean, okay, so I go and I see this beautiful landscape and I take the picture and it looks like that's okay, it looks like everybody else's landscape. So what do you do to make it look different other than the processing? Okay, one thing you said is you cut some of it out, like zoom in and, you know, crop out that side, that side's not necessary. How do you make that high impact
Well,
picture?
you know, it is a two-phase process. One is in the camera and one after the
But as
the
far as
shoot.
in the camera,
In the
do you have
camera.
any, like,
Lighting,
I know I had,
lighting,
okay, go
lighting,
ahead.
lighting, lighting.
All right.
I've heard a story where a National Geographic photo editor told his photographer crew, "Don't even bother to bring me a photo that was taken in the middle of the day. I only want to see stuff when the light is low, because it has so much more drama. It models the landscape so much more when you can see light and shadows. When the sun is right overhead, let's say you have a hill, you really can't see the shadows because it's just light coming from straight down. But when the light is coming from the side, now you've got a highlight side of the hill and a shadow side. And it really adds so much more impact to an image."
Also, I think when you're doing a low light, it's skimming across things, so the grass has more texture because it has a shadow on each little blade of grass
Exactly.
and things like
Really,
that. So you have all that
it's so
texture
true. It's so
with
true.
the low light. So that would be either sunrise or sunset
Right.
around that time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the direction of the lighting is one thing that I always look for.
And where do you put the light? Behind you, on the side of you?
That's a good question. You know, you might think that when the sun is behind you, you have really clear illumination of your subject. But if you think about it, the sun behind you is going to not give you very many shadows.
It's going to be that flat light.
It's kind of flat. The colors may be really rich, but it's got to be more than just the colors. And so when you can have side lighting, it's better.
Yeah.
Backlighting is challenging, but it can be very dramatic. So
That lens flare is in right now.
lens flare, well, you know, if you like the lens flare look, there's you can do it.
It's a trend.
Yeah.
I think
If you
when I
don't-
started photography, if you ever did that, that meant you didn't know what you were doing, and then all of a sudden it was cool.
Yeah, yeah. So you have your choice. You know, you have your choice to go with what artistic effect you're looking for. If you want to avoid lens flare, it's tough to do when you're photographing right into the sun, but you can be pretty creative. I mean, I've taken pictures where the sun is just out of the frame. If I were to angle the lens up just a little bit, the sun is there, and that's a problem. So that tells me that the lens is fully getting hit by the sun. But I find that if I put my hand, you know, and a lens hood is generally not going to do a good enough job when the sun is so obviously right in front. But you can kind of customize your lens hood with your hand, and just very carefully put your hand right where it needs to be, and you can see through the viewfinder, and it does a pretty good job. And the amazing thing is that you get so much better contrast. You can actually see it right through the lens, through your viewfinder. When you cover the sun, the contrast in the scene really jumps. The blacks get really normal and rich. You don't have the lens flare will really affect the blacks a lot. The dark shadows, it'll really make them light.
So
if you want that look, it's great, it's fine. But if you don't, you really need to block the sun.
And so what would be for instance, why would you shoot into the sun?
Gosh, there's so many wonderful effects. The halos that around subjects. If you're photographing a tree, for example, and especially if you have a little bit of fog in the morning, it's really delightful to see how the fog and the objects that are in your scene kind of interact with each other when the sun is backlighting it all.
Oh, wow. I wish I would get up early enough to do that one day.
I came across a scene once last year in which there were trees, and then there was, the fog was not all encompassing. There was just a little bit of fog, or mist rising from a lake. And so what I had was the sun was here, then trees, and then this mist. And the end result was that the trees were casting their shadow on the mist. And so through the mist, I saw the outline of the trees, and then I saw the outline of the shadow of those trees on the mist.
All right, now explain that for our audio audience.
I know. It's, I should just...
So the sun...
Yes, the sun
was hitting the tree.
The sun is
and
first hitting the
tree's
tree.
Shadow
the tree
was hitting the mist.
Was hitting the mist. So you basically
Okay.
saw two levels of the outline of the tree. One is the real tree through the fog, and the other is the shadow of the tree.
That's pretty cool.
And
you have that in your portfolio?
I do. So I can maybe upload that to you.
Yeah,
and
now
you
that we
can-
talked about it, I want to see
yeah,
it.
it's
It
but-
sounds awesome.
well, when you just kind of keep your eyes open for unusual phenomenon, you start to see these kinds of things. And then when you see it, even if you didn't have the opportunity to capture because you didn't have your camera, it puts a flag in your mind.
Okay.
I've taken pictures because I knew that there was a possibility of capturing something that I had seen a year or more prior.
Okay.
And I would look for that and look for that, and then, as the saying goes, chance favors the prepared mind.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
It is. And so you have this kind of library of past impressions of things that you want to shoot, or you saw, you in your mind you thought, this is how I would do it if I had the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just keep your eyes open, eventually that opportunity may come up and you're ready.
I believe that creativity can be learned.
Yeah.
I think if you just, at first you're copying stuff,
Mhm.
I like Marty
Yeah.
Hulsebos' work, I'm going to kind of do this warm black and white tone, but then, or whatever, and then as you start doing it, then you start going, I wonder if I should just try this or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Hey, I have a question, it's not anything to do with anything except for you just brought it up. Is there a way to know when there's going to be fog in the morning?
A friend of mine...
Like ahead of time more than one day?
Yeah. A friend of mine, a photographer friend, told me that his technique is to look at the projected, let me see if I get it right, the projected temperature compared to the,
Ground or
was it the
something,
relative humidity or the dew point? The dew point. The dew point is expressed as a temperature.
Uh-huh.
And when it's projected, typically the dew point, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to give you really...
I'm going to have to look this up.
Yeah, so we'll maybe...
We'll put it in the show notes.
Later I can...
We'll figure it out. We'll put it
Exactly.
in the show notes.
When the dew point is either projected to be either greater or less than the temperature the next morning, there's a high likelihood that you're going to have fog. The specifics we can look up and you
we'll
can...
put them in the show. Understandphotography.com.
Yeah, yeah.
You'll have to look at the show notes, audience. The problem with me is like I got up early one morning,
Yeah.
but I wasn't prepared to take pictures. I had things to do, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If I had a couple days' notice, I could plan it.
Yeah. Well, and the weather, if you check the weather, sometimes even the night before, you can get a reasonably accurate idea of if that effect is going to come.
Yeah. I need
So-
more than one day notice, though.
Yeah, I know.
All right, now right now you're on the art fair circuit, so you go from art fair to art fair, and that's pretty much the main way that you make
Yeah,
your living,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. Let's talk to the audience. How would somebody get started? How did you get started doing art shows? How would somebody get started doing art shows?
Well, I started just with some local shows when I was living in North Carolina in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
How did you
And
get started in a local show?
Well, the shows that are worth getting into are going to be juried shows,
Okay.
which means that you have to compete to get in. The jury shows will have 3 or 4 or whatever number of people who will evaluate all the entries and decide this person yes, this person yes, this person no, and they come up with, you know, their lineup. So it is a competitive process.
So how do you find out about them?
Well, starting by just going to some shows
Okay.
and seeing what's there and thinking, you know, I could do this. I'd like to try it.
And then you find out just ask an artist
Yeah.
or if you have to pay to get in, I guess you would ask those people.
Well, you know, there's also art show websites,
Oh.
which artfairinsiders.com, I believe it's called, is a
artfairinsiders.com.
yeah, or it might just simply be afi.com.
Okay, we'll find that and put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
And that's a list of art shows?
Well, I think they do have a list of art shows, but they also have a forum. They have information, questions and answers.
Oh, for people like, how do I do this?
Yes.
How do I put the booth together?
Right, there's
that kind
lots
of
of
stuff.
information.
Oh,
Right.
that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, just doing a search on Google you'll find a lot of information. And there are Facebook pages that are related to art shows, you know, in which artists will post information about a particular show, and you know, this show, I had a great show there, and
Okay.
talking about
And that's
you know,
how you kind of
specifics.
decide. You do research on which shows seem like the other artists say, hey, this one brought in a high-end clientele. These people are buyers. This is a good show. Is
Well,
that-
there are actually there's a few services that actually rates art shows.
Really?
Yes.
And do you know what those are?
Yes. First of all, Art Fair Sourcebook.
Okay.
That's a service that artists will, a certain percentage of artists will report their sales for a particular show.
Okay.
And based on that, he extrapolates out what the total expected sales on average might be
Okay.
for any given show. But you have to buy into that service. It's fairly expensive, but if you're planning on really making it your living, you need that information, and it's
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah.
So artfairsourcebook.com, I believe, is the website. There's a magazine devoted to art shows called Sunshine Artist,
Okay.
and they rate art shows. And one issue each year, I think it's maybe their September issue, but I'm not sure. You can look at it. People can look it up on the website. They will rate shows. They have their top 200, and then they'll have their regional shows and all kinds of information. But the magazine is devoted to artists doing art shows.
Okay.
So there are articles that, and it's a monthly magazine. There are articles in which you can read about all kinds of things that are helpful for getting started and advancing your career in art
That's
shows.
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so you're in the art show, and how do you get noticed when there are 300 other artists there? What do you do to sell your work? Give us some tips.
So, I mean, to get noticed is one thing. You know, it's
Sell is another one, huh?
It is, I
Okay.
suppose. Having something unique, I think, really helps. I know of a photographer who specializes in fireflies.
Okay.
Who photographs fireflies? They're so challenging to photograph.
Fireflies aren't even that pretty, are they?
But so imagine you're watching fireflies, and the firefly lights up, and now he's moved over here, and then he lights up again, and then moves over here. So imagine with a long exposure, what you're going to see.
Oh, is that what he's photographing?
Yes.
Okay, I was thinking they're not pretty bugs.
But so you've got, it's like a dashed,
So he's doing the trails.
the trails, this dashed line going through the air. Multiply it by 1,000 in a beautiful setting.
Oh, wow.
And add to that, because it's at night, add to that stars in the sky, the Milky Way, this kind of thing. That is a unique thing. So having something, and he's doing very well. So having something unique is really...
That's the... Well, and that helps you get in, too. Because,
exactly.
You know, I'm actually a judge for the Naples Art Association for the art fairs, the local art fairs there. And, you know, I mean, how many sunsets can we look at?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's something that, okay, everybody did, and how many alligators, you know?
Right.
It's like find your niche, right? That's what you were saying.
Yeah.
He's got this niche, and it's very specific, and he's worked it. He's doing a great. And your niche is more this black and white,
the warm tone black and whites. Yeah.
You've turned that into your niche.
Yeah.
Having a niche, I think, is one of the most important things for an artist.
I think it really helps. Yeah. I mean, if you don't find a niche, you better well do really, really well. You better be able to do better than anybody else in that niche, or in that area that everybody else is photographing.
Yeah.
If you're, for example, photographing European scenes, and you go to art shows, you'll see, you know, several photographers who are doing it, but some are really, really special. Yeah. So if you are going to compete in an area where other people are doing the same kind of thing, you just have to have something that
makes it maybe the processing,
special. The lighting,
or the
lighting. If you've got special lighting and the other person doesn't, people are going to notice it. Makes a big difference.
Okay, so say my work is just the best work on earth. So now what? Okay, I got to get a booth.
Well, you obviously first have to jury into the show.
Oh, you'd suggest jurying in before you buy a booth?
Well,
depends how much time you have, I guess, between the time you jury in and the show.
Yeah. If you're going to jury in, you almost always have to have a booth shot as one of your jury shots.
Right.
So you kind of need to get yourself a booth, but maybe you can borrow a booth.
Well, at the Naples Art Association, what they have, and this is what I always tell people, try to join your local art association, because their job is to help you become a successful artist. So their little local show that, I mean, they put big shows on too, but the little local show that they put on, you can just say, hey, I don't have a booth.
Right. Yeah, some shows will allow you to do that.
To get into their bigger shows, you gotta have proof that your booth is beautiful.
Right. Yep.
So, but the little one, it's such a good way to start.
It
They call
is.
it Art in the Park.
Yes.
And it's such
and I highly recommend starting
small.
small.
Yeah, because it's inexpensive too. Because some of these shows are really expensive, aren't
they?
they?
Absolutely.
Like $1,000.
I've done shows in which I've paid $3,200 for a booth, for a double booth. Wow. So, and I've traveled all the way across the country. So and it's in a very expensive area. So, I mean, that's the exception. I mean, most shows are...
is there an average price for a show?
I would say for the better shows, for a single booth, $400 to $500, $600 maybe, and a double booth, it's double that.
Okay, but that's just one part of your cost.
Right.
You have to get there, transportation. You got to get a hotel, unless you've got an RV or something. You've got to have all your work printed. You've
got to have a lot of inventory. The cost of all of your display equipment and your booth, your canopy, your display walls, it's significant. So that's why it's worth starting small.
Yeah.
And just seeing how it goes.
Exactly. And then you might not want to do it. And then you might love it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it might be fun for you
Yeah.
to sit there and talk to the people coming by, and some people are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to sit here, you know.
My friend who did the Fireflies,
Uh-huh.
when he told us that he's quitting his job, he had already put in his notice for his job and he was going to get on the art show circuit. We had him over for dinner once. My wife says, "Can you get your job back?"
But he made the leap of faith in it.
He did. He was fortunate. So, but it's wise to start off slow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the booth. How do you put your display together? I mean, is it a good idea to have, like, you know, the sides to be white, black?
You know,
Does it
to
matter?
some degree, it's personal preference. To some degree, it's the nature of your work,
Oh, that makes sense.
right? And then there are some practicalities involved. Because I do these warm-toned black and whites,
Uh-huh.
I prefer to have a fairly neutral wall color because I don't want a richly colored wall to kind of draw the attention more than my monochromatic
Ah,
images.
So what is your wall?
It's kind of a light gray.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
But I could have used a black wall too, and I think my work would have stood
have
out very
popped.
nice.
Yeah.
Would have been nice. So,
And then now I remember the very first art show I ever did,
mhm.
and I told you my friend who is right across the parking lot, Tom Millsap. He's an oil painter. He's
Mhm.
really good, and he gave me advice to have some small pieces that people could just pay,
Yeah.
just buy small pieces like 11 by 14s and 8 by
Mhm.
10s, put them in a nice mat in plastic,
Mhm.
and he said that'll pay for your booth.
Very smart.
And I was like, oh, that is good
It's
advice.
It's very smart.
Have some small pieces. Of
Yep.
course, your ultimate goal is to sell big, right?
Exactly. But a lot of small sales can add up. I've had shows in which I didn't sell very many big pieces because the local demographic didn't support it.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't really sure. I still had the big pieces up in my booth. But the nice thing is that the big pieces will bring people in.
They get the attention, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they may buy the small pieces because that's what they can afford. And that's fine. So if you are very experienced and you know what the local market is like, you may be able to get away with only showing big pieces. It certainly simplifies things. You only have a limited number of pieces and it's easier to set up your booth. But still, I would say that there's going to be a number of people at pretty much any art show in the country who are looking for something small.
Yeah.
And so that will pay your
And then
expenses.
they know who you are, and they might
Yeah.
become a collector of your art
Very good.
eventually, right?
A very good idea. Good point.
I mean, the one thing that I did that I never even thought of, I went to, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the store, Old Time Pottery. Do you know what that store is?
Mhm.
So this is like, I'm going to say this is 15 years ago. I don't even know, maybe 10 years ago. But I saw these little silver, they were wooden frames, but they were painted silver, so they had the wood feel to them,
Mhm.
and they had a mat inside them, and then there was room for a little 5x5 picture.
Mhm.
Or maybe it was even a 3x3 picture, and the frame was 5x5. Yeah, that was what it was. They were small.
Mhm.
They were really small, and I just thought they were so cute, so I bought them all.
Mm. Mm.
And so this very first art show I did,
Mhm.
I loved infrared photography.
Mhm.
So that with the palm trees here,
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
turn white
Yeah.
with a dark background when you
Mhm.
shoot in infrared. So I just put little infrared palm trees inside each one of these pictures, and I think I sold them for $35 because I think the frames cost me $5.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
should have, in hindsight, I should have sold them for more than that, but I sold them all.
Bingo.
I mean, people loved them, and they bought them. Here's another tip that I've learned over the years. They bought them in series. They
Yeah.
would buy
Good
3
point.
of them or 4 of them.
Very good point.
Now, do you have series of work? Or?
Well, I have matted pictures in my bin, and I
Okay.
also have small pictures printed on metal. A lot of my pictures are on metal, And
That's such a cool look.
Yeah, the big pictures on the wall, they're generally framed, but I also have in my bin small medals that are not framed, but they're still ready to hang. And those work wonderfully in a series, 4 in a square or...
How small are you talking?
The smallest one that I do is 8 by 12, and I
Okay.
also have 12 by 18.
Okay.
I don't like to go too small because, then it becomes kind of cumbersome for...
You got to carry all that stuff
Right.
and set it all up, like you said.
Right,
And
yeah.
the metal is a little heavier than...
Aluminum is a little heavier, but aluminum, as opposed to other forms of metal, is not too bad.
Okay.
So, but metal prints are really cool because they give images a lot of depth and,
I
and
love
snappiness.
that look.
Yeah.
Now, how do you put that in a bin without them getting kind of beat up?
Yeah,
Do you put them in plastic bags, or?
No, that's a good question. First of all, the little hanger that's on the back is what could potentially scratch the picture behind it. So I
Okay.
just cover it with packing tape.
Ah,
I cover the hanger.
okay.
And the surface that's on the metal print is a very tough polymer. And I experimented and I found that, even with people going through them in the bin, it wasn't a problem.
As long as you had the tape on the back.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now, how do you choose which images to bring with you?
I asked my wife.
You need a man needs a wife.
I'll tell you, my wife is the best judge of art that I know of.
Wow. And does she have an art background, or?
It's all inside. She just has
just knows.
She just knows. Yes, no, yes, no, 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 yes.
Wow.
And I think she thinks like an interior decorator.
Okay, good thought.
And she knows what, if I'm trying to sell some color pictures, because once in a while we'll put in some color pictures in my booth. She knows what colors are easy to decorate with.
Okay.
And when a customer comes into my booth and they say, well, I like these black and whites, but I really feel like I need to have some color, well, I have half my website is color still.
Mm-hmm.
So we can talk about that with the customers, and my wife is very good with
helping them.
Yeah.
And so she goes with you.
a lot of time, most of the time she does.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
makes
she's
it,
great.
That makes it more fun.
Oh yeah,
It's not just
absolutely.
a lonely drive from job to job. It's
Yeah,
an adventure,
yeah.
right?
It's huge.
Now, do you take time to vacation while you're out and about sometimes?
Yeah, we
Or not vacation,
si-
but sightsee.
side
That's what I
side
meant.
trips for photography. Yeah,
Oh yeah, that's right. You
Yeah.
got to find a time to take those pictures.
absolutely. Oh, I mean, if we're in the Pacific Northwest doing some art shows, we're stopping at, Mount Rainier State Park, and we're exploring,
Now, is she a photographer too?
She's not, but she has the eye still, and she has her tips on look over there. She'll see things, and I'm photographing in this direction, but she'll say look over here, and so it's great to have a team like that.
That is nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the art show. Okay,
Yeah.
so you've decided which pieces to bring because your wife told you. How do you determine the price?
Yeah,
That's a tough one.
it's a balance between what the market will bear in terms, especially what other people are charging,
Mm-hmm.
as well as what you're paying for it, your cost.
Okay.
So the perception of value is sometimes in some people's mind based on what the price is.
I agree with that.
Interestingly.
Yeah.
So
If it's too
here's
cheap, I think the high-end people won't even consider it.
here's an interesting story. I knew a painter in Arizona who used to be a portrait photographer when he was living up in the Dakotas,
Mhm.
and portraits and actually mostly weddings.
Okay.
And he decided he wanted to move to Arizona. It's too cold up in the Dakotas, and he wanted to basically end his wedding business.
Mm-hmm.
So he thought, well, here's a good way to do it. I'll just boost my prices to ridiculous levels.
Uh-huh.
He got more business.
Uh-huh.
But the story continues.
Okay.
He moves to Arizona. So eventually he just had to close up shop
Yeah.
because he wanted to leave. So he and his wife moved to Arizona, and he wanted to get into painting.
Mm-hmm.
So he started to paint, and he was still in the early stages of his painting career. And he did a small show, and he overheard a lady come into the booth who liked one of his paintings, called her husband over and said, "What do you think about this?" And he says, "I really like it." They both liked it. They looked at the price, and it was only $500 for an original painting.
Mm-hmm.
The husband goes to the wife, "We just bought a $400,000 condo, and you want to put a $500 painting in it, original painting?"
Mm-hmm.
That was a lesson to him. So this new painter overheard it, and so he decided, in consultation with some other friends of his, that he was going to apply to a bigger show, and he boosted his prices up to thousands of dollars, like $4,000 or $5,000. The first show he did, he sold $27,000 worth of his work.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a nice story.
Yeah. So now, having said that, that doesn't mean that you can take a piece of art that you've created and just boost the price to whatever level you like, and it's going to sell.
Mm-hmm.
If nobody's doing what you're doing, if you have a unique enough thing, you may be able to get away with it. But photography is challenging because so many people are doing
Very
it.
competitive.
Yeah. So there's a limit to how high you can go with your price. So there's a lesson there, but you just have to go by trying it,
Mm-hmm.
seeing how it works, and if it's not working, maybe you need to lower your prices. Or if you're selling a lot, maybe you need to raise your prices.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to a large degree it's just
Trial and
experimentation.
What I always tell people is find out who are the local photographers who are doing well.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they don't even have to be local, but who's doing well that's kind of similar to what you're doing, and just price it the same thing they're doing,
Yeah.
even if you don't have the name.
I agree.
Because if you start cheap, you brand yourself as cheap,
Yeah.
and then it's hard to get past that,
Right.
Yeah. So.
I've heard other art consultants recommend to raise your prices, even if you're going to only raise it a moderate amount, but raise it from time to time, so that when somebody comes into your booth next year who saw you last year, they see that, oh, things are getting to be more valuable here,
Yeah.
and maybe I should buy now before it goes up again.
Now, do you have any advice, okay, so you want to attract, what you really want as an artist is to attract collectors, people who are like, I want a Marty Hulsebos, I love your name, Hulsebos, original photograph. Now, do you do limited editions, or
Yeah.
how do you make yourself more
Right, exclusive.
exclusive? That's a good word.
Well, editioning your work is a good idea in general,
Okay.
because while many buyers, they hardly take notice that it's editioned, but some do. Some do. It's not as widespread of an interest as you might like it to be,
Okay.
but especially for photography. With painters, more likely, if you're creating a reproduction of an original, you may be able to get away with only 15 or 20 reproductions before the value starts to seem to go down.
But it's not a real effective sales technique for photographers.
If you have low edition numbers, and by low I mean between 10 and 25, it's just not as important to most people.
Okay. What is most important to most people? What are the
that they
buying?
like the art.
Okay.
You know, it just has to hit them. You know,
Okay.
and of course, how do you predict? It's hard. It's hard to predict. You get a couple who walks into the booth, one likes your work and the other one not so much.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and when you're dealing with couples, you really have to capture both of them.
Yeah.
And so, feeding your own fire, your own passion for kind of going within yourself and seeing what really moves me in a scene and in the end product, the end print. Because the scene doesn't always translate into the end product.
Right.
If it really moves you, that's the starting point to it moving other people.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I look at all of my work, like 90% of my work, and I think, well, I'm not very good. And then I win awards and people buy it, and so I need that. I need a wife, and I don't have one.
as digital photographers, we're shooting and we're shooting and we're shooting lots and lots, and we're picking out the best ones. So we have to give ourselves a break.
Yeah.
We have to think in terms of not the thousands of pictures that we have on our hard drive, but the few that we have selected and that have been proven that other people like, that we like and that other people like, and that's how we have to base, you know, our opinion of our own work.
Yeah, it's hard. That's another reason, though, that I always say to get involved with the local art association, because they will help you with that kind of stuff and help you look at things with a critical eye. You know, that's what we, you know, of course, here at Understand Photography, we teach photography classes and we teach composition and looking, you know, a lot of people, will you look at my portfolio? Of course we will. That's something that is helpful to them.
It really is helpful.
It was so, I have a lady in one of my classes right now, and she's like, oh man, I just put up a blog post, right? And then she took the composition class, and she's like, I wish I would have taken the class before I took these pictures, but they were fine. They were nice pictures. So what, do you do anything like to help, like, okay, so you're at this art show. Are you just at the mercy of somebody coming by, or is there something you can do to help?
Well, you know, your booth
direct
position
people to the booth, or tell people ahead of time that you're coming.
Yeah.
Or?
I create a list. Over the years, I've created a list of email addresses, and I will send it out, you know, in a newsletter.
And how do you create that list? Where'd you get the names?
People who buy from me, I tell them that I put out a newsletter from time to time, and I, you know, send out new pictures. And if they've already proven that they like my work because they're buying, or even if they're not buying, but they've expressed, you know, some positive comments or something, I'll say, you know, I put out this newsletter with new pictures. Would you like to, you know, would you like to be on it? And I tell them that, you know, I don't send it out a lot, you know, maybe once in a month, so they're not going to get bombarded.
Yeah.
But that's enough to get them to know when I'm going to come back and do the art show next year, or if I have new pictures that they might be interested in buying 2 years from now because they just built an addition on their house and now they have new walls or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So having them on my newsletter list is really a good way to stay in touch with them. And if they want to unsubscribe, they can do that. That's fine. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm spamming them.
Yeah.
I don't like to get spammed. Who does? So.
And sometimes it's not an issue. You know, I always tell, because you're talking to me right now. I think a newsletter is the most important thing any business person in any kind of business. Yeah. If you're a plumber, if you're an artist, if you're whatever, you need a newsletter. Yeah. But yeah, so, people unsubscribe, and I'm like, don't worry, it doesn't hurt my feelings, because if I unsubscribe to things that I want the information, but I get too many emails, and I can't keep on everybody's lists.
A few months ago, I decided I was going to count how many new messages I got in one day, and it was well over 100. And you know, that was typical.
I would dream for only 100.
So I just unsubscribe. So
That's exactly what I do, and it's like, and so I know that I'm not. And some of this stuff is like, I really don't want to. I don't want to forget about these people. But the biggest problem is some of them send just too many. I'm like you. I send one a month, and that's it. I'm not going to send one every. I mean, I just signed up yesterday and watched a free webinar and all this, and the lady was really good, and she's already sent me 7 emails since yesterday, and I already unsubscribed, and I didn't buy anything. I don't know. Anyway, but that's, the newsletter is such a great, and especially if you're giving them value. Now you're saying, here's my new work, look at what do you think? And then you're also telling them you're coming to their town or whatever. Okay.
And I will try.
And you have it on your website too, don't you? That you have a list of shows.
I do. Yeah.
So if I say, oh man, I need another Marty Hulsebos, picture, I can go and look on your, because I want to see it in real life. I don't want to buy it off the internet.
It helps. It really helps.
The show helps because that is, we are visual and it's not the same on the internet.
Yeah, seeing it big also really helps.
Oh yeah.
Now,
do you have any last tips that you can tell our audience?
Well, in terms of imaging, you should never assume that your picture can't be made better.
Oh, okay.
You shoot the picture, you bring it onto your computer, and you may think that, oh, I have a bad camera. I just, or I'm just a terrible photographer. But if that person knew how many pictures that a professional photographer took and picked out the best ones and made ones that did not seem to be very good initially, they made them into a real fine art piece because they had the skills and knowledge how to do that.
Photoshop you're talking
Photoshop,
now. Or Lightroom or whatever.
Or whatever, yeah. People might think that, they shouldn't be too harsh on themselves because I have helped people take their own pictures to a new level, and all of a sudden they realize they're a much better photographer than they thought they were.
That is so true, because I'll tell you a quick story and then we got to go because we're almost over, but this is when I first started my career, and I started as a wedding photographer, and I went and I took this week-long workshop with Bambi Cantrell, who's a very famous wedding photographer. She's amazing. She's an Nikon ambassador, all this other stuff. Anyway, she came flying in from California, and it was in her hometown of Columbus, Georgia. So she came flying in, and she put all her pictures up from the wedding that she had just done the day before. And there were like, half of them were just, some of them like the flash didn't go on. I mean, there were tons of bad pictures. And that gave me more confidence as a photographer than anything else, because I thought people like her just pressed the button and everything was perfect. So it gave me a lot of confidence knowing that somebody at her level still took that many bad pictures in order to get the few good ones. So it really, really helped. So what's coming up next for you, Marty Hulsebos?
So I go out on the art show circuit out of state in a few weeks. I go to Texas.
Okay.
I've had some good success with shows there. Then up into the Midwest, and then a little later in the summer, Colorado, and the latter part of the year is still kind of developing. But
wow! But you're going to be on the road.
Yeah, we'll be on the road. I'll probably come back here sometime in the summer, in the middle of the summer. I like to photograph here in the summer because the clouds are so fantastic.
Clouds are amazing.
And clouds are icing on the cake, especially here. You've written the book here.
Yeah.
I'll give you a plug for your book.
Thank you.
But it's the lighting conditions, the atmospheric conditions make all the difference, as we were talking about earlier.
Here.
And if you can really learn how to use that to your advantage, it puts you several steps further down the road.
Yeah, well then good. Maybe we'll go out and shoot now that you're a Floridian.
Yeah.
A Neapolitan, that's what we call people from Naples.
Oh, is that right?
You're a Neapolitan.
Okay. Yay, I'm a Neapolitan.
All right. Thanks, Marty Hulsebos.
Well, I've enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
And we're going to put, what is your website?
It's myname.com. So Marty Hulsebos, that's HULSEBOS.com.
Okay. And that will be in the show notes. So we're going to have some of Marty's pictures and all kinds of stuff that we talked about today in the show notes, which will be on understandphotography.com. Next week on the Understand Photography Show, my guest is going to be fine art photography Rosemary, but she goes by Rosie Lalonde, who will be talking to us about photographing flowers. I just realized we never had a flower show, I don't think. So it's time. So tune in here to the Understand Photography Facebook page at 4 p.m. Eastern Time next Friday to watch the show live. Or remember, you can watch us on YouTube later or listen to us on iTunes. Just do a search for the Understand Photography Show. Thank you, Marty Hulsebos, for being my guest today.
My pleasure.
I'm Peggy Farron. Thanks for watching episode number 81 of the Understand Photography Show. We'll see you next week. Thank you for watching the Understand Photography Show. It would help us immensely if you would click like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.